Why is it that so many older adults, even those who seem strong, sharp, and full of life at 75, begin to quietly decline by the time they reach 80? You might have seen it yourself. A neighbor who used to wave every morning now barely comes outside. An uncle who once joked around at family gatherings suddenly seems quieter, more withdrawn. And maybe you've even started to wonder what really changes after 80 that no one talks about out loud. Most people assume it's just age catching up, something written in our genes or in the stars. But if you've ever watched someone fade too soon, someone who deserved more good years, you know in your gut that there's more to the story. It's not always a disease or a fall that takes them. Sometimes it's something slower, softer, a pattern, a shift, a quiet unraveling. And by the time anyone notices, it's already deep in motion. That's why we're here today, to gently uncover the hidden pieces of this puzzle. 5 secret reasons that many people, even the most careful and health-conscious, miss. They're not dramatic. They don't scream for attention, but they quietly drain your spark, one unnoticed moment at a time. Good evening. So if you or someone you love is approaching their 80s and you want to understand what really makes a difference, what actually keeps a person going, not just in years, but in energy, spirit, and presence, stay with me. Because once you know these truths, you can begin to do something about them. And often it only takes a small shift in awareness to change the course of how we age. Let's start with one that rarely makes the headlines, but leaves deep marks on the body and mind over time. Shorten. Imagine this. You're sitting in your living room on a quiet afternoon. No one's called today. No one knocked on the door. You haven't spoken a word out loud in hours. You're not sad, not exactly, but you do feel faded, as if you're watching life move on around you, but not really with you in it. This feeling doesn't always come from big loss or major changes. Often it starts with the tiny interactions that used to shape your days, slipping away without you realizing. Saying hello to the bus driver, asking a cashier how her morning's going, nodding to the same jogger every morning from your porch. These moments might seem forgettable, even small talk, but they once kept your social mind engaged. They gave you a rhythm, a sense of connection, even if it was only for 10 seconds at a time. But somewhere along the way, the weather got colder. Your knees got stiffer. The stairs to the store started to feel just a little more daunting. And slowly, without meaning to, you stopped going. You ordered groceries online. You asked your son to drop off the medicine. You didn't stop talking because you had nothing to say. You stopped because there wasn't anyone to talk to in passing anymore. I once met a gentleman, Mr. Alvarez. He lived alone after his wife passed. Strong-willed, independent, proud of it. But one day he mentioned something that stuck with me. He said, "It's not the big things that get to you, but it's that nobody asks how your morning's going anymore." That line held more truth than he realized. You see, the brain is wired for subtle social stimulation. It's not just about deep conversations or meaningful friendships, though those matter too. It's also about those light, fleeting moments that remind us we're still part of the human fabric. When those vanish, the body responds. Your nervous system slips into a quieter gear. Hormones shift. Your brain's emotional circuits start to dim. And most dangerously, you start to feel like you don't quite matter in the same way anymore. That loss of being seen doesn't make headlines, but it makes people older, faster, not just in body, but in soul. And the heartbreaking part is, most don't even notice it happening until they've already started retreating from the world. If this sounds familiar, even just a little, here's the good news. It doesn't take much to turn it around. One walk a day, one good morning to the mail carrier, one chat with the person behind you at the bakery. These aren't distractions. They're medicine, real biological medicine that tells your brain you're still here, you still count. And if you're still watching, still reading along, I want you to pause for a second. Ask yourself, when was the last time you had a small, unexpected interaction that lifted your mood just a bit? That reminded you the world still sees you? If it's been a while, maybe today's the day to gently step toward one again. The body doesn't need a grand gesture. It just needs a reason to stay switched on. Coming up next, we'll talk about something that many people think is helping them live longer, but in truth, it might be slowly pulling them away from the life they once loved. It hides behind good intentions and the desire to stay safe. But if you're not careful, it can quietly lead to the very thing you're trying to avoid. And most people don't realize it's already begun. It often starts with something small. A near slip on the front steps. A sudden moment of dizziness while standing too fast. Or maybe just a neighbor's story. Someone around your age who had a fall, ended up in the hospital and never quite recovered. And from that point on, something shifts. You start to second guess. You walk a little slower. You stop reaching for things on high shelves. You choose the safer route, the shorter walk, the more predictable routine. It seems like a smart decision. And at first, maybe it is. But here's the quiet trap no one talks about. When we begin shrinking our world to avoid danger, we sometimes shrink ourselves in the process. It's not weakness. It's human. It's protective instinct. But when it becomes a habit day after day, it rewires the body in ways we don't see until we do. I remember a woman named Linda. She was always active in her 70s, loved tending her garden, going on short hikes with her sister, even volunteered to walk dogs at the shelter. Then one winter, she slipped slightly while getting the mail. She didn't fall, didn't get hurt, but it spooked her. That was the last time she walked to the mailbox on her own. She started asking her neighbor's son to bring things in. Then she stopped going to the dog shelter on colder days. By spring, she told me, I feel like my legs forgot how to walk the way they used to. She hadn't gotten older overnight. She'd gotten still, and her body, like all of ours, noticed. That's the thing. Movement isn't just about keeping muscles active. It's how the brain stays alert, how our inner sense of balance stays sharp, how circulation keeps its rhythm. When we sit too long, avoid too much, say, not today, too often, the body begins to unlearn the very things that once made us feel strong. This doesn't mean ignoring real risks. If anything, it means respecting them wisely, wearing proper shoes, using a handrail, taking your time, but not quitting altogether. Because strength, especially after 80, isn't just about how much you can lift. It's about how willing your body is to keep showing up, even gently. You don't have to go far. Even walking circles in your kitchen, stretching your arms toward the sky once a day, standing up from your chair a few extra times, these are signals to your system. I'm still here. I still need you. And if you've been moving less lately, not because you can't, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you try, maybe it's time to ask, is this protection or is this quiet retreat? The body doesn't need you to be fearless. It just needs you to keep moving, even carefully, even slowly. Movement tells the heart it still has purpose, still has a direction. Now let's turn to something even more subtle. Something most people don't realize is affecting them until they're lying in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering why they feel so tired during the day, and yet so restless at night. This next hidden reason doesn't have anything to do with a diagnosis. It has everything to do with light. You see, our bodies have an inner clock. Not the kind you wear on your wrist, but one written into every cell. It tells you when to wake up, when to eat, when to feel sleepy, when to repair and heal. But this clock isn't automatic. It needs sunlight to stay accurate. And once we stop going outside often enough, or flood our homes with too much artificial light at night, the whole system starts to lose its rhythm. I once met a man named Elias. He was 85, sharp-minded, cheerful, but he'd been feeling unusually groggy and forgetful. His blood work looked fine. His diet hadn't changed. No new medications. The only thing that stood out was how much time he spent indoors. Since his wife passed, he said, he hadn't felt like opening the blinds. The house feels more peaceful dim, he told me. But that dimness was tricking his body. His mornings never fully turned on, and his evenings never fully turned off. He fell asleep later, woke up multiple times during the night, and by morning his body didn't feel refreshed. It was still catching up. His doctor gave him one tiny task: sit by a window with open blinds for 15 minutes every morning. No screens. Just light. After 2 weeks, Elias was sleeping better. He said he felt clearer, like someone had opened a curtain in his brain, not just his home. Light is that powerful, and yet we underestimate it. Bright morning light tells your brain the day has begun. It sharpens your focus, boosts your energy, even nudges your hormones into balance. Then at night, when the light dims, your body starts releasing melatonin, that natural, gentle signal that it's time to rest. But if your evenings are filled with blue light from a phone, a tablet, or the TV that runs until midnight, that signal gets scrambled. You fall asleep later. You sleep lighter. You wake up feeling as if you barely slept. The solution isn't complicated. A short walk in the early daylight, a conscious decision to dim the lamps after dinner, maybe swapping out one late-night show for soft music or quiet reading. These aren't big changes, but they send big messages to your body. You're safe. Okay. You're in rhythm. You're okay to rest now. And if you've been struggling with sleep, not the kind that comes from pain or medication, but the kind that leaves you feeling tired even after 8 hours, it may be time to look at your light. Not just what you see, but when you see it. Because a well-timed sunrise, even if it's just through a window, can do more for your health than any supplement ever could. In a moment, we're going to talk about something that's harder to see: melatonin. It doesn't show up on lab tests. It doesn't make noise. But it weighs more than we admit. It lives in the silence between words, in the photos we don't frame, in the stories we carry but rarely speak aloud. And for many people in their 80s, it becomes the quiet force that drains the will to keep going, even when the body could have gone further. You might already know what I'm talking about, but very few of us know what to do with it. It often goes unnoticed, even by those closest to us. But by the time someone reaches their 80s, they've likely said goodbye to more people than most others have ever had to. A spouse, a sibling, a best friend, perhaps even a child. These are not just names on a page or faces in old photographs. They're parts of a person's story, chapters that gave life meaning, rhythm, and reflection. And when those chapters close, something inside changes, even if the outside world never sees it happen. Grief, when it's fresh, is loud. It cries, trembles, and spills out. But over time it softens, or so people think. The truth is, it doesn't really go away. It just learns to hide. And that, perhaps, is one of the most dangerous things for the aging heart. You see, after a certain age, many people stop talking about their pain. They've been told directly or indirectly that they should be strong, that they've already lived so much, they should be used to goodbyes by now, that time heals, that tears are for the young. Zoran. But here's the quiet truth. The body remembers every loss, every goodbye, every silence. And when we don't give those emotions somewhere to go, they don't disappear. They settle into the shoulders, into the stomach, into the sleep that won't come easily, into the spark that fades not from sickness, but from sorrow that never got to speak. I once met a man named Charles, 86 years old, lost his wife of 61 years. He didn't want to talk about it, said he was fine, said she'd want him to keep going. And so he did. But something was different. He moved slower, not from pain, but from weight. He smiled politely but rarely laughed. He told stories about her, but only the light ones, never the ones that hurt. Over time, his appetite shrank. He stopped going to the community center where they used to play cards. He started sleeping more during the day and less at night. His body wasn't broken, but it was waiting for him to feel something he kept tucked away. Grief that's unspoken doesn't fade. It lingers. And over time, it begins to erode the systems we rely on most: immune strength, emotional balance, motivation to move and eat and connect. It's like a quiet fog that settles over the mind and heart. Not enough to scream for help, but just enough to dull the world around you. But here's what so many people miss. You don't have to be loud about your grief to begin releasing it. You just have to be honest. Honest with yourself, with a friend, with a journal, with God, with someone who won't try to fix it, but will simply listen and say, I hear you. Sometimes all it takes is saying out loud, I miss her, or I still cry when no one's around, or some days I feel lost without him. These aren't weaknesses. These are signs that your heart is still alive and that it deserves space to breathe. I've seen people begin to heal not through therapy or medicine, but through small rituals of remembrance. Lighting a candle every morning, wearing their loved one's scarf on cold days, writing a letter to someone who's gone and reading it under the trees. These aren't grand gestures, but they are sacred because they remind the heart that its pain is real and so is its capacity to heal. If you've been carrying something heavy in silence, whether it's grief, regret, or memories too painful to share, I invite you now to consider this. Your body may be aging, yes, but your heart still needs the same things it always did. To feel seen, to be heard, to be allowed to ache without shame. That's not dwelling in the past. That's letting the past have its rightful place so you can keep walking forward a little lighter. And if you're still here, still watching, still listening, maybe that's a sign that your heart is ready. Not to forget, but to soften, to let go of what it was never meant to carry forever alone. In a moment, we'll turn towards something equally quiet, but just as powerful. It's the part of life that doesn't shout, but whispers its way into your routine. It's not about pain or illness. It's not even about grief. It's about those slow, empty mornings, the afternoons that blur into each other, the subtle question that starts to echo in the back of your mind. What am I even waking up for? You may not say it out loud. You may not even realize it's there. But when a person loses their daily purpose, no matter how small, it doesn't just affect their spirit. It begins to affect their lifespan too. Not long ago, I spoke with a woman named June. She was 88, still living in the same house she'd raised her children in, still making her own meals, still sharp enough to recall the name of every neighbor from 40 years ago. But her voice held something I couldn't quite place at first. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't confusion. It was more like stillness. When I asked her what a typical day looked like, she paused for a moment, then said, I suppose I mostly just wait for the day to pass. And there it was, that invisible drift that happens when the rhythm of daily life begins to unravel. It doesn't show up as a dramatic crisis. There's no sudden event. It begins quietly, when a long-standing routine ends, when a role you once filled disappears, when the people you used to do things for and with are no longer around. Maybe you used to get up early to make your partner's coffee. Maybe you used to call a friend every evening after dinner. Maybe every Thursday was bingo night, or every Sunday meant church and a potluck. But now, the mornings come slower. The afternoons feel longer. And the question you never used to ask begins to whisper louder. What am I doing all this for? This is not about life purpose in some grand, sweeping way. It's about something simpler, and maybe even more essential. The little purposes. The ones that pull you out of bed in the morning because something is waiting for you. A task, a rhythm, a tiny obligation that brings shape to the day and meaning to your movement. Without these, life doesn't just get boring. The body starts to quiet down too. Appetite decreases, motivation shrinks, and eventually the systems that keep us alive begin to wind down. Not because they're broken, but because they think they're no longer needed. I once met an older gentleman named Howard who had no surviving family, no close friends nearby, and hadn't traveled in years. But every single morning at 7 a.m., he went outside and fed a group of stray cats that waited for him on the edge of his yard. Rain or shine, he knew their personalities, gave them names, spoke to them like old friends. And at night, before going to bed, he'd jot down in a little notebook which ones came, what they ate, and how they seemed that day. That was his rhythm. That was his reason. And it mattered. Because no matter how small it may seem, that kind of consistency tells the brain, I still belong to something. I still have a part to play. When the days start to stretch out without anchors, without habits, without expectation, life doesn't just feel flat. It starts to lose momentum. And slowly, the will to engage, to connect, to simply keep going softens. Not because there's no more life left, but because there's nothing calling it forward. But the beautiful thing is this: it doesn't take much to restore a sense of purpose. A short walk to water the garden, a call to check in on a neighbor, writing a letter to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, keeping a daily gratitude journal, feeding the birds outside your window, baking something just because it makes the kitchen smell like memory. These aren't about staying busy. They're about staying present. Tethered to the world around you in a way that matters, if only to you. And if you've been feeling lately like the days are beginning to blur together, like nothing really separates a Monday from a Friday, it might not be your body that's slowing down. It might be your purpose that's simply waiting for a new direction. It doesn't have to be bold. It just has to be consistent. Purpose doesn't care how grand it looks. It only asks that it matters enough for you to keep returning to it. So take a moment. Think of one thing, just one, that gave you joy, meaning, or a reason to move yesterday. And if nothing comes to mind, that's okay. That's where the change begins. Not with guilt, but with curiosity. What could you add to tomorrow that would give it shape? Who could you reach out to? What small action could you repeat each day? Not because you have to, but because it reminds you that you're still needed, still connected, still alive. Because at the end of the day, what allows people to live past 80 with vitality and presence isn't luck, and it isn't just strong genes. It's the quiet rituals, the emotional honesty, the decision to move, to feel, to engage, even when it would be easier not to. So here we are. We've talked about the 5 hidden reasons that quietly shorten life after 80. Not because the body fails, but because life slowly slips out of rhythm. Not talking to people as often, avoiding movement in the name of caution, losing the rhythms of natural light, holding on to pain in silence, letting go of purpose, one small habit at a time. But here's the hope in all of this. The very same way these patterns crept in silently, they can be reversed, silently, gently, patiently. You don't have to overhaul your life. You don't have to chase youth. You just have to notice. One extra smile at the corner store, one stretch before bed, one morning walk into the light, one honest conversation about what still hurts, one thing that gives your day shape again. And over time, your body begins to respond. Because it's never really too late to remind yourself, I'm still here, and I still matter. If you've made it this far, thank you. That alone says something powerful about you, that you still care, still seek, still want to understand what it means to live deeply, even now. I hope something in these words stayed with you. And if they did, please share this with someone who may need it too. A friend, a sibling, a parent, a neighbor. Sometimes the quietest truths are the ones that change us most. And if you're willing, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this felt familiar? Which secret reason surprised you the most? And more importantly, what's one small thing you'll do today to bring yourself back into rhythm? Until next time, take care of your heart. It's carried you this far, and with the right care, it may carry you even farther than you think.